Slashing a smoking tear through the veil, she, her very self, appeared before them, terrible and resplendent. She came arrayed in ebony darker than a moonless night, wielding a blade burning hotter than the surface of the sun. And though she wore the guise of a Dunmer warrior queen, she towered above them like a statue carved from Red Mountain itself. When you look upon the face of Boethiah, do so without fear. Even if your demise is a few heartbeats away, face it bravely. If you do, the Prince of Plots will smile upon you as she cleaves you from shoulder to groin. Battle is a blessing, and death is an eventuality. Worship the glory that is Boethiah. Whether he manifests himself as a poised, broad-backed brute, garbed in a fine cape beneath spiked pauldrons, battle-axe in hand, or whether he comes as a woman shrouded in serpentine shadows, with a tall serrated sword raised skyward in glory, Boethiah is always overwhelmingly powerful in stature, a stoic and unyielding warrior. This Daedric prince is the ideal representation of a warrior, only to mortals his motives are unknown. Boethiah relishes in battle and conflict. He savours nothing more than competition with deadly stakes, often pitting his own followers against one another in brutal blood sports. It is believed that Boethiah delights in the death and destruction of mortals, for that is the natural conclusion one would draw from the description I've given so far. But as is often the case with the residents of Oblivion, things are not that simple. Hey guys, it's Drew here and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. In this video I'm going to tell you all there is to know about this seemingly evil Daedric prince, and I'm going to tackle the real motivations behind Boethiah's savagery. So let's start off with some background information. Who is Boethiah? Boethiah is the Daedric prince of deceit, conspiracy, treachery and sedition. He is the constant battle for superiority between mortals, and naturally this often manifests politically. Power is everything on Tamriel, and those who rule live luxuriously, while those who serve toil and suffer until they perish, likely by the hands of a totally curable ailment. Boethiah's relentless displays of strength are generally viewed as harsh and heinous, but where there is strength there is often veneration, as is the case with the Dunmer, who view this prince as one of their god ancestors. It is his link with the race of elves hailing from Morrowind that best serves my argument that he is not evil, but I'll get into that in just a minute. Boethiah's realm of Oblivion is often called Snake Mount, or alternatively Attribution's Share. The skies here are constantly ravaged by storms, the seas are molten streams of lava, and the landmasses are volcanic islands rife with steaming fissures and hazardous terrain. It is very similar in appearance to Mehrunes Dagon's Deadlands. Boethiah has 3 known Daedric artifacts, and it is no coincidence that each one was created to give a warrior the edge in battle. The first is the Ebony Mail. This cuirass is similar in appearance to ebony armour, only it is enveloped in a cloak of shadow which poisons all who come too close to the wearer. Boethiah gifts this artifact to her new champion and reserves the right to reclaim it at any time. Her second artifact is named Goldbrand. Goldbrand takes the form of a golden katana and was created by the dragons of the north, imbued with Boethiah's power. It is said that the sword burns those that it strikes, as if they were engulfed by dragon flames. His final and least known artifact is called Fearstruck. This artifact took the form of a shield and was wielded by the Tamrielic hero Lyrisius, who used it in his conquest of Akavir. When his army was routed in the First Era, the shield was destroyed by the fiery breath of an Akaviri worm. Fearstruck has never been seen since. But now that we know about Boethiah, his realm and his artifacts, we can talk more about his interactions with mortals, the precedent used in his ill repute on Tamriel. I mentioned before that this prince loves blood sport and shows no remorse for the fallen. This leads mortals to believe that he delights in death and suffering. That could very well be true, but I don't think it's that simple. The book titled Boethiah's Proving tells a tale of her visit to a gathering of her faithful followers. Upon her arrival taking on the visage of a towering Dunmer warrior queen, she goads her followers into proving their worth. The first of her faithful, the follower who carried out the sermon and led the ritual, attempted flattery, displaying thoroughly his fanaticism. He said, "O Boethiah, Prince of Plots, Deceiver of Nations, Queen of Shadows, Goddess of Destruction, we come to worship thee. Each night I pray to thee, each night I call out thy wondrous names. Surely thou must recognise the sound of my voice. Thy most devoted of believers." Boethiah's shadow-covered face contorted into a frown, and she let out a long sigh. She made him vanish, dispersing him with the air from her lungs. Awestruck by what he had seen and shocked by the glory of Boethiah's presence, the second follower fell to his knees, bowing before her. Dissatisfied, Boethiah clapped her hands and he too was gone. The third, afeard of the prospect of going out the way the first two had, begged Boethiah for mercy. She blinked twice. Once he was in agony, twice he was destroyed. And then only two remained. Boethiah announced that she does not show mercy, and beckoned the remaining faithful to prove their existence. Without hesitation, the first unsheathed his sword and thrust it into the chest of the second, and without letting fear waver his voice, he spoke to the unnerving presence before him. Boethiah smiled, and the gates of Oblivion opened between her teeth. She then said, "Tell me, now last of my followers, wherefore do you remain where the others do not?" And the follower replied, "I am alive because that one is dead. I exist because I have the will to do so, and I shall remain as long as there are signs of my handiwork, such as the blood dripping from this blade." To which the satisfied prince uttered one final word, "Indeed." In the eyes of most mortals, this story acts as an irrefutable indictment for Boethiah's love for gratuitous violence. But I'd like to argue that it is not gratuitous at all, neither is it proof of Boethiah's evil. Instead, I would argue that perhaps Boethiah revels more in the glory of the victor than in the death of the defeated. She views strength as essential to survival, and mercy as a weakness she will not endorse, especially to mortals who have so much at stake. Power means very little when you're immortal, hence why it's so hard to quantify the power of the Daedric Lords by mortal standards. Even the weakest immortal cannot be killed. They have an eternity to make mistakes and learn from them. But to mortals, power is the difference between suffering and prosperity. It truly is life versus death. Boethiah understands this, and he teaches it to mortals the only way that will stick, the hard way. He emboldens the strong to grasp life by the throat, and he condemns the weak to die for their failures, returning to the soil from whence they came. While this is a terribly harsh reality, it shows off a trait of Boethiah's that very few Daedric princes possess: selflessness. Boethiah has his own cruel brand of altruism. And don't worry, I'm aware of how paradoxical that sounds. But think about it. While some princes seek only to satisfy their desires and exploit mortals, Boethiah seeks to strengthen them. His treatment of mortals is like a callus. He provokes those with potential to harden their skin, rise above and become better. He's the prince who tells you to get good. Becoming the champion of Boethiah is arguably one of the most admirable positions in Mundus, because this prince will only give his blessing to the best of the best. Many of the examples we see of Boethiah's cruelty can be interpreted this way, and perhaps that explains why this seemingly evil prince is revered in one particular culture by one particular race. That race is the Dunmer. Boethiah, along with the other princes of the Reclamation's Temple, Azura and Mephala, is responsible for the existence of the Dunmer as a distinct race. But Boethiah's involvement in their value systems came about before the Dunmer even existed, when they were a different, not yet cursed race called the Chimer. On a brief side note, I know that Chimer is pronounced chimer in ESO, so you can decide whether ESO counts as lore in your books. During the Malefic era, many of the descendants of the Aedra and the ancestors to all races of modern elves, called the Aldmer, worshipped Trinomac. These early Mer held the sentiment that Lorkhan had tricked them, and they lamented their mortality, wishing to rejoin the Aedra in Aetherius. Mundus was a trap. Many of the modern High Elves, especially those in the Falmor, still strongly believe that. But back in the Malefic era, Boethiah approached a group of Trinomac's followers, and he started preaching to them a different viewpoint, one that emphasized their own personal responsibility and put an end to their resentment. He told them that the Aldmer were weak. He said that they were unworthy of immortality, and rather than feeling entitled to eternal life, mortality was an obstacle they must overcome. That is why many modern-day Dunmer refer to life as a test. Boethiah successfully convinced a group of Aldmer to adopt his mindset, and they split off from the others, becoming the Chimer, the Changed Ones. Trinomac was not pleased by this, and he tried to stop them, but Boethiah, the Dark Warrior, confronted the Aedric hero and consumed him. Led by Veloth, the Chimer completed their pilgrimage across Nirn and settled in Resdain, the land we call Morrowind in current times. The foundation of this race's values and teachings are credited to Boethiah. This includes philosophy, magic, architecture, and their clan-based political system, which focuses on power and displays of strength and superiority. No wonder the Chimer was so dominant. With the help of Azura and Mephala, Boethiah showed the Chimer everything they needed to prosper. This to me seems like a great argument for Boethiah's harsh but important lessons. The prince didn't offer the Chimer mercy, he instead told them to overcome their hardships. He sculpted them into winners who use mortality to fuel their advancements, rather than moping losers who blame Lorkhan for their shortcomings. When Vivek and the Tribunal betrayed their oath after the Battle of Red Mountain, Azura turned the Golden Chimer into the ash-skinned, blood-eyed Dunmer, but that didn't change their attitude towards the Free God ancestors. Boethiah's acts are seldom seen as good or honourable, but they are fair. Consuming Trinomac and turning him into the disgraced Prince Malakath was a cruel and barbaric affair, but Trinomac had betrayed Lorkhan and conspired to murder him with the removal of his heart. Conspiracy and murderous plots are Boethiah's sphere, and he therefore consumed the corrupted hero. When a mortal overcomes the perils of mortality and thrusts their sword to the heavens in a grand victorious sweep, it is Boethiah who bestowed them that strength. And there you have it guys, why I think Boethiah is not an evil Daedric prince. I hope you enjoyed the video, and by all means if you have anything to add either in support or against my argument, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, my name is Drew and I will see you later.